Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yeah, it was just a little bit delayed. There we go.
Okay.
Melker, bro, welcome to the pod.
Yeah, thanks, dude. It's been a
How
long
are you,
time
man?
coming. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. It's been very cloudy in Mexico for the first time in like a couple months. So it's kind of nice, but I do miss the sun for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because we have had really good weather here past month or past 3 weeks maybe. And then last 2 days have been like kind of raining. And it's funny how after a long winter, and I've gotten like so used to the sun for these past like 4 weeks. So now I'm like, what is this? What are these clouds for once?
Yeah, what time is it over there?
8 p.m.
When's the sunset?
I mean, in the summer, it'll set very, very late, actually. Like, I mean, it has probably set for now, but it'll be bright until like 11 p.m. or something. Like
Wow.
you can probably see like how bright it is outside right
Yeah,
now.
I
And
did. It's like as bright as me at
and
12 in the day.
exactly. And I remember very vividly, like a couple of years ago, I was on FaceTime with some friends from the US. And we started talking like super late Swedish time, and then past midnight, and got dark. And then I was up until like 2:30 a.m. or something, and the sun would come back up. And my friends were like, "What is going on? Like, it has turned dark, and now it's turned bright again."
Yeah. When's the sunrise?
Well, in the summer, it'll be like 3 a.m. or something like that. Very, very
Oh,
early.
wow. You have so much daytime then.
Yeah, but then in the winter, it's the opposite, remember? So
Right.
it's so we will we'll have like a couple of hours of daylight.
Well, brother, let's get right into this. I'd like you to give us a little bit, mainly for the listeners, who you are, what you do, and what got you here to where you are today. And the reason I ask the guests to explain this part is just because, I don't want to get into the descriptions that they want to be known to the listener. So I'd rather you do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, now I'm running a footwear company called Wyde Footwear, and it's been quite a long journey to get to this point with a lot of different careers that I've been trying out. Everything from like different startups to doing real estate in New York, which I did right after I graduated college. And I think I've always been very seeking of something that has a purpose.
Okay.
And not settling for something boring, even if it makes good money. I've never been able to do that. So I need to feel this like burning purpose that I'm doing something good for the world, which has sometimes in my early career led me to leaving a lot of money on the table, but it's just never been that motivating factor, money alone, especially in professions where I felt like I would be replaceable if I would be run over by a bus, for example. That someone else could just step in and do my job the next day. So yeah, from there it was just a journey of seeking after something that would light some kind of fire inside, and led me to starting a footwear company, which I never would have thought even like 4 or 5 years ago. But stars were aligned.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful introduction. I mean, before we get into like the footwear company Wyde, what originally got you into like the health schizo Twitter place?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for the first many years I used Twitter, I was only a consumer, only reading, basically just checking it for some news, checking like some soccer stuff. But I think this is maybe like 1 or 2 years ago where I started. I don't even remember how I found some of the health accounts on there, and I just right away felt like I could relate to them. And when you find one, you tend to start finding the whole crew, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's an amazing group of people, and been fortunate to get to know a bunch of them, which is weird that you can actually consider people your friends when you haven't met them in real life, which I'm sure I will at some point. But it's a beautiful thing, and especially when you have so much in common. And I mean, I've been interested in the health space long before I was on Twitter. So yeah, that's kind of how I found it. I think it was pretty randomly, actually. I don't even
Wow.
remember. Probably on
And
the like for you page, or I mean, maybe that didn't exist back then. But yeah, I don't know. I don't even know actually.
wow. So how did that health interest peak in the first place?
So I was like 15, I think 14, 15, and my family
Oh, wow.
bought a water filtration system back then, and it was like I couldn't even believe it, because I had grown up people telling me that, oh, Sweden has the best drinking water in the world, best tap water, and so I always believed that as truth. And then once I started reading some reports, and we just started filtering it, and we
Well,
we one of the things we did, what you could choose the acidity level on that water filtration system. So we put like a super acidic water, and we put it on some cherry tomatoes that were inorganic, and after like 10 minutes the water was yellow, so all the pesticides and everything had come off the tomatoes and into the water, which was a pretty eye-opening experience. And then after that, we just we did a lot of things in our house. We started buying only organic, like simply for that reason, realizing how much better that was. But also, like, we stopped using the microwave, and we did all that stuff. And then yeah, and after that, I mean, I've been on my own journey to like find my truth, and what I truly believe in myself, and has led me down a long path. But it's getting clearer by the day. I at one point I believed veganism was the ultimate answer, and that was a mistake. But we all make mistakes.
yeah. Why? What was that experience? I hear this, so like this is such a repetitive story in my podcast. People just going vegan and coming out of that, and that's why they got into this like health rabbit hole.
Yeah. I think many years ago I saw this guy on YouTube, and he was a raw vegan, and he looked healthy, and he seemed to know what he's talking about. And I just thought that okay, makes somewhat of sense. You can make a logical explanation for a lot of things, and it'll make sense. But
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
and then but and then I decided that at some point I'm going to try it. Back then I couldn't, when I first found him, because I was like an athlete and traveling and playing tennis and stuff. It just wasn't possible. And then I was in college, also wasn't possible. And then when I got home, I was like, okay, I'll try the vegan thing for 30 days, and ended up doing it pretty much for two years.
Wow.
And but yeah, it was horrible. I mean, I got so skinny. I wasn't even muscular before that, but I got really skinny, and like developed some white patches. I was losing hair. It was like it's very, very bad. And I was so convinced of the ideology that I was like lying to myself. I thought that must be something else wrong, because I wasn't putting the dots together. So yeah, then I was in Italy for a vacation, and then one of the days there, I just said, no, I can't do this. I ordered some fresh fish from the sea, and never looked back after that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Was it back then, or even when you were 15, once you bought the water filter, that you also became aware with the foot issue?
No, so that came much later. Well, I've always had. I can't see you, by the way. I don't know if you can see me, but
you can't see me.
No, it's the screen is black.
Oh, give me a second.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see me there?
No.
Oh my god, that sucks. I can't see you. You're a bit laggy, but I can. Has it been like this since we started?
Like 5 minutes in, it's been like loading and loading. I've been thinking that it would come back, but it hasn't come back.
Oh, really? I don't know. It might be your Wi-Fi. I just connected to Ethernet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think my connection is pretty good. I mean, if it's fine for the recording, it's fine for me. But just wanted to let you know.
I'm pretty sure the recording is fine. But
Okay.
are you comfortable with this? Or do you
Yeah,
wanna
yeah,
get-
it's fine. That's
Okay.
fine.
Perfect. So yeah, let's talk about the shoes. I mean the feet.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. I mean, I've being a tennis player, I've always had. Now I can see you. um, I've always had a lot of foot pain. I mean, I used to think it was normal to like just put my feet into these tight tennis shoes, have severe pain for like 2 weeks until they're broken in, and then play with them for 3 or 4 weeks before they break, and then you repeat that cycle for 15, 20 years. And but I never really reflected on it, to be honest. I was always thinking, well, these big brands must know what they're doing. Why would they make something that's not optimal? And then a couple of years after my tennis career, I just stumbled upon this concept of barefoot shoes, and I ordered a bunch of them. Pretty much switched out my whole wardrobe, and I thought that was the ultimate answer. I started, going from 0 to 100, and realized that that can also be a problem. So so the Wyde was kind of born from the idea of combining the best from both worlds. Like we live in a very modern world with very hard, unnatural surfaces, and it's kind of sometimes stupid to go from like a super cushioned tight shoe to a super minimalist barefoot shoe overnight and think that you're going to be okay, because most people won't.
Yeah, that's interesting. Does that also kind of apply to like going barefoot immediately?
Yeah, I
Does
mean,
that-
most people can handle it. Like, for example, if you're just walking barefoot on soft surfaces like the beach or on grass or anything, you get used to it. But
Yeah.
I mean, if let's say you've been walking in something like super cushioned, like a Nike running shoe or a Hoka running
Sure.
shoe, and then you're walking on asphalt or concrete,
Yeah.
and then the next day you're like, okay, I'm just gonna walk barefoot now. A lot of people will find that to be quite uncomfortable, and they will have to change kind of their walking style, because otherwise it will just hurt too much. So that's kind of where we came in, because we didn't think that there was anything on the market where these like mindsets were combined, that we were like, because we don't want to stop living in the modern world. We want to experience the world, we want to see things, we want to be able to walk downtown or whatever city you're in and walk for long periods of time without having that pain. So yeah, we just put our heads together, recruited some of the best foot experts in the world, and that's really how it started.
Yeah, I really need to get a pair of your shoes. So you went about fixing your feet, trying barefoot shoes, correct? Like that was kind of the start of it. What else got fixed when you started to go with barefoot shoes? Because something that I've learned personally from the body itself is that, I mean, simply it's a system. So if you fix something, it's connected to something else, right? Does that make sense?
100%. And I mean, a lot of the movements that we perform will always start at the feet, so they're hugely important for that reason. So I mean, if you have, take an example of like one thing that has almost every modern shoe has, which is a heel to toe drop, meaning that the heel is higher than the front of the shoe. That means that you're essentially standing in a downhill position all day. So what happens is, in order for you to not fall forward, you will need to kind of compensate, meaning that you would have to make your body straight. Same thing if you're standing. The easiest example, if you're standing in a high heel, right? So what would happen then is that you activate and compensate with muscles that are not supposed to be activated in the posterior chain. So your lower back will take a hit, your hamstrings will take a hit, and if those take a hit, I mean, your neck, your shoulders, everything will be out of place. So for me, it's not that I felt like, okay, now something was severely fixed. It's more that, okay, I'm not getting these small pains anymore. And once you stop getting them, you don't really think about them, because when you are in pain, or when you are misaligned in your body or whatever, you think about it all the time. But when it's gone, you're just like, oh, this is the new normal. I'm not thinking about this anymore. Same thing with getting healthy with anything, right? Like, let's say you've always been eating crap and then you eat healthy. You barely remember what it felt like to eat crap all the time. So it's more that things came back to baseline rather than some major issue was fixed. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that was very well said. So kind of in the same topic, can you share a little bit on, why you kind of touched on it, but why modern footwear is actually destroying not only your feet, but your whole body?
Yeah. I mean, so there's a couple of aspects of modern shoes that I personally very heavily disagree with. And that is, if we take them by importance, so I think the absolute most important thing is the shape of the toe box, where the toes are in. If someone doesn't know, that's the part of the shoe. And most of them in the world are pointy, meaning that the longest part of it is in the middle toes, like the second and the third toe. And this is not how the foot looks in its perfect anatomical shape.
Right.
But if the shoe looks like that, that means that the outer toes, like the big toe and the pinky toe, will take the biggest hits because they will have to be angled inward towards the other toes. And angling especially the big toe towards the other toes is a very bad idea because it kind of puts the whole foot out of place. And if you put the whole foot out of place, you put the whole body out of place.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So a lot of people will, for example, say, oh yeah, I'm flat-footed, or oh, I have a collapsed arch. Yeah, and we always say that the best arch support in the world is an aligned big toe.
Mm-hmm.
So and if you angle away the big toe, then that's going to risk your arch of collapsing, which will have many effects up the chain. So that's why the foot is so incredibly important. So that's one thing. And then, I mean, we have the other aspects of most shoes have a very stiff sole. So the reason they do this, or one of the reasons they do this, is because they want to preserve the look of the shoe. Because if the upper material cannot bend, means that it will last for longer, it'll look nicer for longer. So that's kind of like a trade-off that you have to make. But it results in that the toes cannot bend when they're walking. So if the toes cannot bend like they're supposed to do, means that you have to start walking in a different way. So most people, you will see this, have their feet like angled outwards a lot like that, just because that's the only way to like come forward, right? Because if you can't, because if you think about it, if you cannot bend your toes, it's very hard to walk. So then you'll angle your feet out and you'll start walking funny. But the funny thing there is you'll kind of make the issue even worse, because if, let's say the big toes are angled inwards, and then you are angling the feet out and walking, meaning that you'll put pressure on the big toe knuckle every step you take, meaning that you'll make the issue worse with every single step you take. So that's one thing. That's another thing. And then we have the heel to toe drop, which we just touched on a little bit, where it puts, in addition to what I said before, it puts a lot of pressure on the forefoot, because if anyone who has ever stood downhill will know that the pressure distribution goes to the front of the foot, and that's not very nice to be in all day. And of course, especially the women listening will know that when standing in high heels, but it's actually the same in most shoes, just to a lesser degree. And then finally we have something called a toe spring, which is so a lot of shoes will have the heel to toe drop, but then they'll actually also add like a little upwards curve at the toes. Yeah, they do this so that when you walk, it'll feel like you're rolling forward, which is very, very stupid, because that's not how the foot works.
What do you mean, like rolling forward?
Well, if you think about, like, let's say your heel is higher, right? But then if you also angle up the toes, it'll kind of be like a banana shape. You'll kind of roll forward. So the whole foot, so think about it. It's so crazy when you think about it. So you put the toes out of position. You put you angle the big toe and the pinky toe towards each other. And then you have a stiff sole, so the toes can't bend. Yeah. And then you have a heel to toe drop, putting pressure on the forefoot. And on top of that, you're angling the toes upwards so that you're rolling forward, and stretching the plantar fascia under the foot. So it's like really, it really is like foot suicide walking.
Yeah.
And then you're training this 10,000 steps a day.
Right. Yeah, I
You're
was just
expecting your body to work well. It's just unbelievable.
yeah, exactly. That was exactly what I was just thinking about. Like, it's so overlooked because it's just so normal to A, be wearing shoes like this, and B, to be having problems like that. So yeah, that's interesting. And there was another point you mentioned that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, while you think about that, I can just say that it is so crazy, and I'm a part of me is like, okay, I'm lucky to have the mission to solve this problem to the
Right.
scale that I can, but it's also frustrating because you're thinking, okay, like I was wearing this for the first 20 plus years of my life, and
Right.
imagine like the function, imagine the speed, imagine like how good I could have been at other things earlier if I just simply wasn't destroyed by shoes, thinking I was doing the right thing. And that's kind of frustrating sometimes, but you do what you can.
Yeah, and I mean, not only that, I just remember one I wanted to mention. Like, I'm pretty sure, I don't know, I don't remember where I read this from, but babies who grow up, starting to wear shoes that are tight, like you explained, they start to lose different bones when they grow up, right? That is so wild.
It is crazy, but I don't know if you've seen this, but I posted some stuff from our study we did in Sri Lanka, and
Right.
so there was this one family that we met that was super interesting. So that we met these people in a gym. The dad was like super muscular guy, and he brought his family there. And he had 3 daughters, and the 2 youngest daughters were I don't remember the ages, but they were, let's say they were 4 and 7 or something. And then they had an older daughter who she had been to school 2 or 3 years, I think. And the youngest 2 daughters had perfect feet, like perfect function, perfect shape, perfect everything. But then the older daughter, who had been in school with a very tight shoe dress code, she had a severe deformity, like big hallux valgus. For those who don't know, hallux valgus is when the big toe is out of position, pointing towards the other toes. So it was just so interesting to see, like you mentioned, with kids, right? Because those formative years are also so important
Right.
for the rest of the foot health during their lifetime. So it was super interesting to see how, because a lot of people will still blame genetics and all that stuff. So
Exactly. Yeah, you're reading my mind. Like I was just thinking about that study you made, which I really want to get into. Like, I want you to explain us why, and first of all, what inspired that study, and two, what did you get from it? But my takeaway from that study is that it's the perfect, like the absolute one of the perfect examples on genetics versus environment, right? Like how faulty it is on blaming genetics for these problems when in reality it's just the environment, right?
Yeah, I don't think that genetics is at 0%, but I think it's at a
Sure.
very, very low percentage.
Okay. Yeah.
And I do think it's more about, like, you can have, for example, a genetic predisposition. For example, that you have worse bone density, or you have
Okay.
and some
Yeah.
nutritional deficiency that you've gotten from your parents or whatever, that makes your feet form easily. So when you put those already at disadvantage feet into a tight shoe, they will like take form.
I see.
They won't be as resilient for the environment. But I think, but here's what I'll say. Like, doing that study, scanning over 1,000 people, we didn't see a single person who had lived a life without shoes, even how poor, how nutritionally deficient they were, who had a misaligned foot like that. We just didn't see it. And it was kind of crazy because when we did the pilot studies back in Sweden here, that's all we saw. Every single person almost has a deformity of some kind.
Wow.
And we put them through a 3D scanner, so we see all the exact measurements, and it's just pretty mind blowing to see how it can be that big of a difference because of environment, like you said.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about the study. It's called the shoe effect study, right?
Yeah, so that's like the project name. The actual
Okay.
published study will be called something different, but we refer to it the shoe effect. Yeah.
Beautiful. Can you talk to me a little bit? Well, can you explain to the
Yeah.
folks who don't know what it is? And I'm also very curious, like what inspired that study? Like where did you guys visit? Indonesia?
Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka. Why did
Yeah.
you why was that the chosen place?
Yeah. So to give a little bit of a context, so we over 100 years ago, I think it may be even 120 years ago, there was a paper written by a scientist called Hoffman, and he basically went to African tribes to look at feet, and then he saw the same things that we saw, like amazing functional feet. He took photos of them and all that stuff, and then in the actual study he compared them to, I think, people from Switzerland. So even though I think the evidence was quite compelling, a lot of people would say, okay, yeah, but that's a genetic difference because yeah, you're comparing apples and oranges. I mean, you're comparing African tribes people to Western Swiss people, and that's not really fair. The photography was okay, but it's still pretty grainy. I mean, over 100 years ago.
Sure.
So, and then from the start, once we launched Wyde, we always said, like, we're not really interested in just being another shoe brand. I mean, it's pretty boring. Like, if we're going to do this and we're going to do it for real, we have to do something bigger. We have to live the mission and do everything we can to because as I've said from the start, I would love to see 100 brands doing what we're doing. Like the world needs that. The world needs it. Unfortunately, there's not many this time. But so what we said was, okay, we're gonna take this concept of this study and we're gonna take it to the next level. So we're gonna instead of doing 250 people, like I think that study did, we're gonna and some other studies have tried to do as well. We're gonna take it to 4 digits, over 1,000 people. We're going to study the same genetic group, so meaning that we're going to Sri Lanka. I mean, the same ethnic group. Sorry. People from the same country, because they do have this population of, some of them are very, very westernized, living in the cities, wearing the same type of shoes that we are doing. But then they also have this like rural population where some of them have never worn shoes. So we wanted to compare those two groups and see, like, just, is it genetics, is it not? I don't know. And then we wanted to bring like the best equipment that you can find, like an expensive 3D scanner to like get the exact measurements of feet. We brought like this high-tech plantar pressure plate where we can see the pressure distribution on everyone's feet, and then also modern photography with expensive camera equipment to really document what we found, and just make something that is way harder to disprove than what, and that you can't blame genetics, you can't blame you can't blame much. So that was the goal.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What was the biggest takeaway from the study?
The biggest takeaway from me personally was that modern shoes are horrible, which in a way I already knew, but it's another thing to actually see it with your own eyes,
of course,
and because I mean, I personally, we wanted to be so deep into this, so I took charge of doing the 3D scanning station during the study, and so I mean, I personally scanned over 1,000 people, 1,071 to be exact, and that was a huge learning curve for me as well, to see patterns, to talk to all of them, and 1,000 people is a lot of people to scan, and I think we all in the team, we were like a little bit naive towards how many people that actually is. And I think when we had done like 800 or something, we all at dinner one night, we were saying to each other, like, okay, we understand why the other ones did only 250 or 150 or something, because it is very, very taxing, but it's so worth it.
Did you guys give out some shoes to the people who were wearing shoes?
No, we didn't, simply because it would have been so hard to like bring shoes to Sri Lanka. But we did what we could. We like supplied people with food and drinks and a lot of that stuff.
Beautiful.
So, to the extent that we could.
Right. So let's get into Wyde Footwear.
Yeah.
It was born with your issues as a tennis player, correct? Like after discovering what barefoot shoes were, right?
Yeah, yeah. I will
How?
also say, like, to preface that, I
Yeah,
never, when I describe what we do at Wyde, I never use the term barefoot shoes because I really hate it.
really.
Because to me it's an oxymoron. I
Okay.
mean, either you're barefoot or you're wearing shoes. Like, you
Okay.
cannot be barefoot and wear shoes at the same time. And I
Right.
know what they mean with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's well intentioned, but I I like to call our shoes functional shoes,
Functional shoes, beautiful.
just because we want to optimize people to have optimal foot function, and we want them to wear shoes when they're wearing shoes, and also, of course, be barefoot as much as you
Yeah.
can. So yeah, I never liked the term and never used it myself, but I use it like in contexts like this because that's people know what we're talking about, because there's also
Beautiful.
there's no set definition of what a barefoot shoe is either. So a lot of people will call our shoes barefoot shoes. A lot of people say, oh, it's not a barefoot shoe, because like, for example, one of our model, we have a little bit more of a cushioning for a
Okay.
reason.
Okay.
And but some people still call it a barefoot shoe because we have a wide toe box, and so I just don't use that term, but feel free to use it. Just wanted to clarify that.
That's beautiful to clarify. I'm going to use functional shoe now. It makes more sense as well. So you kind of mentioned it right there and a little bit before, kind of the mission and vision, why does this exist? What are you providing?
Yeah, so we're providing a way for people to wear shoes and to look cool, I think, but not having to be worried about destroying their feet, and giving them a pathway towards actually restoring their foot function. Because we do believe that to almost every case you can, the earlier the better, of course, but in most of the cases you can actually restore foot function, depending on how you treat it with footwear, and with the type of socks and the type of toe spacers and exercises and everything you can do. But the first step is, I believe, to just change shoes to get to the root cause of the issues.
Right. So I feel like that could be a really interesting study, no? Restoring foot function with Wyde.
Yeah, we're actually going to start that soon. We're going to do like a couple of 3-month experiments where we're going to supply people with shoes and follow them weekly, and also giving them some exercises to do, and see what can happen in 3 months, because we've seen so much anecdotally, but it would be nice to do it more in an organized way. I think we're starting already in a couple of weeks. Yeah,
that's beautiful. I mean, not only anecdotally, you've lived through it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've seen so many benefits myself, and I think also it's important for people to understand that once you've been wearing a specific type of shoe your whole life, like, the change won't happen overnight. You have to give it time, and but if you are patient with it, you will see and feel very good results.
Yeah, as soon as you saying that, I was staring at my foot. I remember I had the Grounded Athlete.
Yeah.
Around 20-ish. Yeah, around 20-ish episodes ago. And I remember I used to have my foot was very triangular because of the shoes, like you just explained.
Yep.
And my pinky was hidden inside the rest of the fingers, if that makes sense. And from that podcast, I've spent my time more grounded, more barefoot, I mean. And I've been using more wide and functional sandals and shoes, his boots, his sandals, and it's not under my fingers anymore. It's still kind of triangular, but I can now use my foot more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And that's good. And I mean, you're also young. You can if you dedicate to this somewhat.
Right.
It doesn't mean hours of work per day, but some wearing good shoes, and maybe being conscious about it. I mean, in a year or 2 or 5, you'll have different kind of feet, and that'll be awesome for the rest of your life, for sure.
Yeah, I was just taking note. You mentioned on helping people restore their foot function, not only by wearing functional shoes, but by doing certain feet exercises. Is there anything you can share on that?
Yeah, I mean, it will really depend on what kind of issue you have.
Right.
But I think, like, in terms of exercises, it's hard to give exercises like this. I would recommend following like a page like My Foot Function on Instagram. They share a lot of free stuff where the people can try and do different techniques.
My foot function. Let me just search that.
My Foot Function. Yeah, it's the organization that we did the study with. Also based here in Sweden, good friends of ours.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and I think, but I think one of the easiest things that everyone can do is to get toe separators.
Okay.
And
right.
And I think this is one of the simplest but most powerful tool that you can have.
Really.
And yeah, and I mean, here's how I would use them if I was someone listening. I would buy a pair. Doesn't have to be from us. Can be from anywhere. There are many different options. And just start by wearing them for 15 minutes. Then on day 2, maybe you do 30 minutes. And depending on how you feel, you just go higher and higher.
Right.
And I mean, I'll walk around with them for 12 hours a day because I just love how it feels.
Yeah.
And because I also have the opportunity to be barefoot all day. Like I'm my own boss, so I don't have to dress up for someone else's office rules or something like that. But I understand not everybody has that that flexibility, but yeah, just walking around as much as possible in toe separators when you're at home will make such a big difference over time, and it feels nice too. I mean, people will like it.
Beautiful. So kind of in the same topic, what would be a healthy foot?
Yeah, so a healthy foot should really be the widest at the toes, and because of the shoes we wear, it's not the truth for a lot of people listening to this, not in the Western world.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will find that their big toe and their pinky toe are kind of angling inwards to some degree.
Yeah.
And the funny thing with the big toe is that if it's in its perfect position, it should actually follow kind of the bone. So it's not even just pointing forward; it's pointing a little bit outward.
Right.
If you see what it should look like, and there should be a gap between the big toe and the second toe.
And should that be the same for the pinky?
And no, it doesn't have to be. That can be more like forward-ish.
Okay.
It depends a little bit on the specific foot shape that you have, but in general, it doesn't have to.
Okay. Beautiful. So another question on Wyde, and actually my last one for that. What has been like the biggest we could say like lesson or takeaway building that brand and making your experiments?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway is that the product is really helping people, and that's fun.
That's beautiful.
But I think like during the course of this, I mean, I've been working on this project for 3 years, 2 years of development, and then now we launched almost exactly a year ago. And
2 years of development. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it took a lot of time to develop. It's difficult to make a shoe. It really is, and there's so much to it. If you make a T-shirt, like you put 2 pieces of fabric together and you can sell it, it'll take like an hour, right? But a shoe is very complex to make in many ways. So, and I had no idea how to make it when we started. So we just had to learn. Yeah, but I think, yeah, I mean, the biggest takeaway, the thing that hits my mind is that helping people is what we do, and that's what makes me wake up with a lot of energy every day to help more people because it's so needed. Yeah,
that's beautiful. And I have, for my last question, I think it's one similar, which is, what brings you most joy in life?
What brings me joy?
Yes, most.
Yeah, most joy. To me, like analyzing my past and where my mentality is, it's definitely making a difference, helping others. That's where I get most joy from. I've
Okay.
never been. I've actually, like I touched on before, but I've never been very motivated by money. Money is fun, money is good, and money gives freedom, but it can never be the sole motivation, because that's just empty. And if money was my biggest motivator, I would have never done this project. For
Of
example, I would
course.
have probably worked in finance or for a
Real
hedge
estate.
fund, and so
Yeah.
maybe real estate. I mean, whatever. But to me, it's life. Life has to be so much more than that. And my deep belief is that we are here to improve the world, and
Wow.
in whatever shape or way we can. Everybody's mission is different, but if we try to leave the world with have made it leave it better than we found it, I think that's a
Wow.
good way to live life, and that's what I strive to do
Yeah,
every day.
absolutely. I agree, and that was very well said, man. I'm so happy we finally made time to do this, to make this happen.
Yeah,
This was really cool. Thank you, man.
yeah. Thank you.
I really appreciate your time, your words, and giving me the opportunity to speak with you.
Absolutely, man. Of course.
Yeah, perfect, man. Thank you so much.